And the threats to our nations, they don't sleep. They're watching our every move. Iran, Russia, China, North Korea, ISIS, Al-Qaeda. They may be watching this right now. Our military should not be mistaken for a cable news gabfest show. We don't care what you look like. We don't care who you voted for, who you worship, what you worship, who you love. It doesn't matter if your dad left you millions when he died or if you knew who your father was. We have been honed into a machine of lethal moving parts that you would be wise to avoid if you know what's good for you. We will not be intimidated. We will not back down. We've seen war. We don't want war. But if you want war with the United States of America, there's one thing I can promise you, so help me God. Someone else will raise your sons and daughters.
I want to make it clear that the views expressed by our hosts are not considered the official stance of MBR Views. Remember, this is all about having fun and enjoying the ride.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Tracer Round Podcast. A tracer round is a type of ammunition designed to help visually track the path of rounds fired. Tracers show where you need to adjust or redirect fire. Join Army veteran Sergeant First Class Terry Lynch for Tracer Rounds, the first ever podcast of its type. Whether it be military, music, sports, politics, education, relationships, or gender issues, no target is off limits or out of bounds. Are you on target? Or does your fire need to be recalibrated? Whether you adjust fire or fire for effect, tune in to Tracer Rounds, where the range is always open and there are rounds going down range.
Hi, welcome to Tracer Rounds. I'm Terry, your host, and I've got with me a special guest. I didn't name him because I wanted him to introduce himself and I wanted you to hear directly from him, but this is Chaplain Father Jeffrey Ballou, and I was privileged enough to get to work. Well, I am privileged enough to get to work with him, and I wanted to kind of give a little backstory on chaplains. In the military. I didn't know we had them, honestly. I knew we had them in basic training because they saved us from the drill sergeant all the time. So I knew that I could go to the chaplain there and I'd be safe at least for 30 minutes, maybe an hour. But beyond that, I didn't know we still had chaplains. And when I got an assignment to Southcom, I went into the Sergeant Major's office and he said, "I've got a job for you." And I said, "Yes, Sergeant Major." He goes, takes me by the coat sleeve and he goes, "This office right here, they need help from you." And I was like, "Really?" And I said, "And what am I going to be doing?" And he said, "You're going to be working for the chaplain." And I said, "Okay." So that was my introduction to chaplains in the military, in this military. And I'm fortunate enough to work with an Air Force chaplain who's also a Catholic priest. So I want him to say hello, and then we're going to go through some conversation with him.
Good evening, ma'am. How are you?
Good, good. I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you agreed.
Glad to be with you.
I wanted to kind of talk. Thank you. I wanted to kind of talk about what you did before you went into the chaplaincy, and then just kind of your career path, and then what kind of led you to make a shift in your career.
Okay. So back when I was about 3 years old, my godmother's mother said, "What do you want to do in life?" And she expected, like soldier, fireman, police officer, or something like that. And I said, I wanted to be a priest. And she just like, wow. And so I kind of always sort of manifested that. But my parents gave me some great advice and said, why don't you go and see what the world has to offer before you give something up? So you get to see. But they said, as you do that, don't break any of the 10 commandments. And I thought they took all the fun out of life. But I graduated from high school. I went on to Western New England College, and I got an undergrad degree in biology. I went on to the University of Hartford, and I got a graduate degree in biology, specializing in cellular ultrastructure. So which is basically looking at cells through the electron microscope and scanning electron microscopy, and that was my whole area of study and thesis and all that good stuff. So when I graduated from the University of Hartford, I went on to work at the world-renowned Joslin Diabetes Center in Boston. So I worked there for a time, and then it was when Congress and the president were sort of battling it out against the budget, and Joslin Diabetes Center said they were going to lay us all off, and then they would rehire us based on funding. So I thought, how am I going to have a wife and kids and car payment and a mortgage payment if I get laid off in research? So I basically hung up my lab coat, radionuclide badge, test tubes, and all that good stuff. And I went to a corporation, Energy Beam Sciences, who made a lot of things for the scientific industry, which we used in our lab. And so they needed someone to teach them basically the things that they were selling, because many scientists like myself wanted them to make modifications to various products, but they didn't understand why they would make these modifications, how it would make the product better. So I had the know-how because I used them in the lab, and they would teach me the business aspect, and I would teach them if you will, the biology, the science aspect. So as Joslin was getting ready to sort of lay us off, I took the turn and worked for business. So then I worked in Energy Beam Sciences, and I was basically the corporate administrator. Now you probably would refer to us as a chief operating officer. And so I had a very good job, made good money, and I was able to travel. And one day I sat down at my desk and I kind of looked at the wall where I had some nice pictures of one of my trips to Italy. And I said, there's got to be more to life than this. And all of a sudden, I'd be at the store, I'd be here, I'd be there. And, oh, you'd make a great priest, you'd make a great priest. And I kept hearing it over and over. And the old expression goes, you can run from God, but you can't hide. So I tried the running, I tried the hiding, and obviously it didn't work. So I left my job as the corporate administrator. And actually the company kept my job open for a year, thinking, the president of the company said, you're not going to like this. You like the corporate world, you like the travel, you like the paycheck, you like all these aspects. And I said, yeah, I do. So when I finished my first year in the seminary, we got out in May, like a college or university. And so I went to see him and I said to him, I don't think I'm coming back. So at that point, they hired somebody, and they had divvied up some of my jobs, and they had kind of hired somebody. And I think they then gave them the full-time job, because obviously I wasn't coming back. So I went from ordination. I had my first assignment for 2 years. And then my second assignment for 2 years, I was both the associate, so the number 2. Well, during my first assignment, I was near Westover Air Force Base. And a very nice Master Sergeant, Robert Kozlowski, saw Father Gallipo, God rest his soul now. Very nice guy, was the pastor for me when I was a deacon with him at Holy Cross Parish in Holyoke. And he said to me, how about coming off for Mass to Father Gallipo? And he said, hey, I'm getting older. My church has a leaky roof. Ask the kid. So they asked me to come and help out at Westover. And unfortunately, that coincided around the time of 9/11. So it was that time that basically I was a priest who was volunteering at Westover Air Reserve Base, anointing various men and women going, on the C-5s to be transported to various posts and bases and forward operating bases. And I did that, as a volunteer for about 3 years. And then the wing chaplain at the time said, Father, you're doing a great job over here. The people really like you. We're going to go see the bishop. And the wing commander's coming. And I said, oh, great. Go right ahead. I said, we have a shortage of priests. There is no way they're going to make me join the military, because they paid for my education, what have you. And they had a meeting, and I think it was like October or November. And they said, oh, they had a great meeting with the bishop. The wing commander was very happy, impressed. And they said that's all they wanted was a little bit more of a formal commitment, from the bishop for my presence at Westover. And I said, oh, they're probably going to exchange letters and some sort of, agreement. And I said, oh, that'll be fine. Well, in December, I got a call from the bishop. We played phone tag a little bit. It was about a week before Christmas, and he called to basically order me to enter the United States Air Force. And I said, thanks for the opportunity, but no thanks. He said, I don't think you understand. And I said, oh, I do. You're giving me an opportunity. I'm telling you thank you and no thank you. And he said, no, this is where obedience comes in. And you promised obedience, if you remember, at ordination just a few years ago, about 3 years ago. He said, and you're going to do this. And so, as you can tell, I did. So I went to the recruiter, called in January sometime, and the process began. And on 29 April of 2004, on the feast day of St. Catherine of Siena, I took the oath of office as a military chaplain.
That's awesome. Like I would have no idea that your path going as a priest would then end up in the Air Force. Like I wouldn't have
Neither
seen
did
that
I.
trajectory at all.
And some of the guys, the chaplain recruiters would come to the seminary, and a lot of the guys would go and they said, aren't you coming? And I said, no, I got homework to do. I don't have time for that. And it's interesting. Some of them, I was on EWTN, and some of them called, my parents to say, he didn't want to join the service, but we did. We didn't, and he did. And I said, God is a God of mystery, right? The God of surprise. So you just never know. Mm-hmm. So if you want to give God a good laugh, tell him your plans. And so I think it'd be interesting. So it's been very interesting. It's been very rewarding, both as a priest and as a priest and as a chaplain in the United States Air Force, and also in serving all the men and women of all the various branches of the service in my deployments. And obviously, as we work together where we work, with all the branches present. So it is interesting. You meet a lot of really great, wonderful people. So it's really, really been an awesome experience these last 20 years and a few months.
That's awesome. So we have about 4 minutes before we go to the first break. Do you think you can describe a few of the duties that you do before we go to break, and then we can follow up whatever you don't have time for before,
Okay.
before we have to break for commercial? So what duties do you have right now? Like what's a normal day look like for you?
So a normal day is, you get up like everybody else, and you either, kind of get ready for work. And if I have time, I pray part of the Liturgy of the Hours. If not, then I head off to work and spend my day, seeing people, hearing their confessions, giving them some advice, some counseling, doing a lot of listening, doing advisement to commanders, both enlisted and officers, and being a sounding board for them, and dealing with emails and the requests that come through those for various invocations, appointments, and obviously working on a strategic perspective for the area that we work with our partners in various countries throughout the world in regards to the area of chaplaincy, and the care of people, the men and women that we serve in our respective faith background, in our respective countries, and our respective militaries. So it's very interesting, and it's very, very rewarding. And I get to work with some really great people like yourself and so many others in the office and in the complex. So it's really great.
So when we come back from break, we're going to go here in just another couple of minutes, but I kind of want to talk about what it looks like when there's chaplains of other faiths, and what you can and can't do with certain processes or certain ceremonies, certain things, because I know that as a Catholic priest, you've got certain things you've got to do, and then there's Protestant responsibilities. So I was kind of curious how you make that determination about, how you go from one thing to the next and stay
so it's kind of hard.
Lane, so to speak.
You're all of a sudden you're doing your work, and you got to change your uniform because you've got an invocation or a retirement ceremony or a promotion ceremony, and God forbid, you've got to change your uniform to go to inform somebody that they have a loss of a loved one, or as I think you accompanied me one time, we went to the hospital for one of our veterans who had served quite valiantly and was working with us as a civilian took ill, and we went to the hospital together and to comfort, his loved ones as well as his teammates. Even though he was retired, they were quite concerned. And as you remember, there was a number of them at the hospital. So it's sort of a roller coaster day every day. You kind of never know what you're going to get, the ups and downs. In regards to chaplains, as each chaplain stays in their specific denominational lane, right? But we can help to provide for the free exercise of religion to all faiths, right? So for someone who is Protestant, who's not Catholic, or someone who's Jewish, or someone who's Muslim, or someone who has a different faith background, we provide them with the means and the tools to exercise their religion, whether it's providing them with a private room for prayer, or whether it's looking up locations for them to be able to go to various religious services in their respective denominations, and just being very respectful of them and their faith and their human dignity as Jesus would meet them, right? He created them in love, and he loves them, and he would, as he was in the Gospels, be always very respectful of them and very loving. And so I think that's the important thing, but that's not a sign of weakness, right? As officers and as chaplains, it's actually a strength for us to live and to project and to promote as a chaplain corps, but also as for the members who come to see us, their strength and their determination and their faith background. And you can really learn a lot and share a lot if you communicate and give and receive that respect for one another, because we're always learning about each other, and I think that's really great.
We're going to have to go to break, but when we come back, we'll finish that thought. H, can you take us to break, please?
Too big, wanting to grow up way too quick, searching for spotlights since I was 6. Hello, my name is Dream Too Big. Hello, my name is way too loud. My voice can cut right through the crowd. Got made fun of for it, but who's laughing now? Hello, my name is way too loud. I know I've had my moments and I've had heartaches. God is making miracles out of my mistakes. You can say I won't make it, and I can tell you that I don't really care. 'Cause hello, my you're never gonna leave the ground. You can tell us all about it when you come back around. Hello, my name is Get Knocked Down. Hello, my name is Stand Back Up. Keep moving even when it gets rough. I've given so much, but I ain't giving up. Hello, my name is Stand Back Up. I know I've had my moments and I've had heartaches, but God is making miracles out of my mistakes. You can say I won't make it, and I can tell you that I don't really care. 'Cause hello, my name is going somewhere. Going somewhere. Oh, it's going
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Interview of the week sponsored by LTD Tactical.
Hi, welcome back to Tracer Rounds. You're on MBR, where veterans have a voice, and I'm with my special guest, Chaplain Jeffrey Ballou, who is also a lieutenant colonel in the Army. I about said Army, sorry. I
All right.
about put you in a whole other branch. You didn't want to do that, in the Air Force Reserve, and I have the pleasure of working with him and his in our religious affairs team. And I have to tell you, I'm impressed with the whole bunch. And so I just wanted to share the experience that I get on the daily when I'm on duty with these wonderful people that support the military mission by giving, the services that soldiers, airmen, Marines need to be successful in their missions. So we kind of talked about, before the break, we talked about some of the things that you do on the daily as a military chaplain. I wanted to ask you too, I know we've had 2 people recently ask you how to become a military chaplain. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So it depends on your faith background, but it's pretty similar. So, for example, as a Roman Catholic priest, or probably anyone who is in a Christian denomination, so they would need, for us as Roman Catholic priests, we need a degree from a seminary. We need ordination through a bishop in a diocese, and then we normally serve about 3 years in parish life. So we get used to being a priest. We get used of parish life. We get used of all of the things that go along with parish life, right? All the things that impinge upon our time to serve the people, right? To hear people's confessions, to talk with them about, the illness of a loved one or the passing away of a loved one, and administering all the sacraments, baptism, administer the sacrament of the sick, how to do a funeral, how to do a committal at a cemetery or a mausoleum, how to engage people in counseling. You see, in the seminary, they teach us a lot of things we practice, but as you know, we can practice everything, but once it comes into real life, it's like, wow, you can practice anything and everything. And once you start doing it, it's like, wow. So it basically gives us that 3 years, sometimes 4 years of a better understanding of being a priest, right? And then we can enter the military. And we usually enter sometimes as a first lieutenant or a captain, depending on our years of service in the outside. So we tend to be a little bit older because remember, we have an undergraduate degree, seminary is a graduate degree, and it's usually between 4 to 6 years now. So we tend to be a little bit older when we come in. So, not, 22, 23, we're, like 25 and older. So sometimes, some of our equivalents are first lieutenants, they're already captains and, moving along because, they've already got their degree and, their bachelor's degree and they're moving on. So we come in with usually some more education and some real life experience, which is really helpful to the people that we serve, right? We can relate much better to many people as, like in my a couple minutes before, well, yeah, I write out checks. I had to go grocery shopping. I lived a real life, and you can relate and they can relate to you. And it's, again, like Jesus, it's all about relational, right? It's all about relationships. It's all about building those relationships. Like where we work now, a lot of times some of the things we need to get done, yeah, it's computer based or whatever, but a lot of times it's the people that we know to help us do our jobs. And it's them who know us for us to help them accomplish their needs. So a lot of it is all relational, and it's building and maintaining and sustaining these relationships with each other at work to get things done. And that's the way it works, for example, for us in the Air Force, at bases to deal with, the JAG and the wing commander and the vice commander and, the people at EO and the people at the clinic and the people, who care for other aspects when we want to be able to give warm handoffs to people. So we develop those rapport with our peers so we can really utilize the system and the facilities and the people to get the help that the people that come to see us need. Because remember, we have complete and absolute confidentiality. So a lot of people will come to see us, ask us all kinds of questions because they know we can't say anything and they know we're going to help them. So then we can get them to Airman Family Readiness, or we can get them to the JAG, or we can get them where they need to go. And we can make those calls instead of them to say to the JAG, hey, I got a hypothetical. Or, to finance, I've got a hypothetical. Oh, Father, we know it's somebody. And I go, yep, but you don't need to know that. And so we're sort of like the hub and the wheel, right? The center that those spokes go all the way out to the whole tire, right? So we have connections with all those various people, sometimes, to help people get food. We have a food bank a lot of times in bases. And so you work with the people and, you can really help a lot of people because it's our connections with the people that we work with. And it's those well-oiled relationships. And they know when we ask for help, it's not for ourselves or we're just being flippant. They know there's a real life case that really the men and women and their families need the help.
That's true. So I wanted to ask you too, what surprised you most about being a military chaplain? I mean, you're a priest and you have your own parish,
Right.
and so you have your surprises on that side of the house. But what surprises did you have being a military chaplain?
Sometimes some of the things, you hear about in the military and you kind of like, you either experience them yourself or you see other people experience them and you kind of go, wow, glad that isn't me, or glad that was me versus somebody else. So it's been really interesting. I've seen some great, wonderful joys of getting to work with some great people and see them promoted and get to know their families. And then on the other side, to see some of the career crashes, the career burns, and some of the issues with families and marriages and children. So sometimes you think military families have it all together. Well, they have same issues and problems that people outside the military and vice versa. But you see the great order, you see the great structure, right, that the military brings. And, we're all of different backgrounds, but when we're all lined up, we all wear the same uniform, we're standing in formation, or the commander says to do this, or the vice commander says to do that, or whoever is in command. And we follow and we appear when we're supposed to appear. We do what we're supposed to do, not like, well, I'll think about it. Maybe I'll be there. It's no, you will do this and you will accomplish this. And if you don't know, you have to figure it out. And I've worked with some great they were called at the time chaplain assistants, now religious affairs. I've worked with some great, awesome religious affairs men and women who have just been, if it wasn't for them, I couldn't have accomplished my task. And they'll say the same thing. If it wasn't for us as the chaplains to help them, they couldn't have done the awesome job that they've done. So for us in the chaplain corps, at least in the Air Force, it's a team concept, right? As you sort of, we are a religious support group. We're a religious support team, right? And you bring what you bring, I bring what I bring, but together that force multiplier can really help so many people in so many different areas, which sometimes on the civilian side is a lot harder than on the military side. Military side can be very easy, but also with the rules and regulations, it can be a lot harder and a lot cumbersome than on the civilian side. So again, it has its give and take. It has its pros and cons.
Right. Okay. Well, we're going to have to go to break here in just 1 minute, but what I wanted to get you to thinking about before we come back is what tools do you take with you when you deploy? So we'll hear about that when we come back from break.
Sure.
Take us to break, Joel.
It's the guts and it's the glory. 100 stripes, 100 stories. It's the Pledge of Allegiance on the 4th of July. It's them handwritten letters from home. It's them sleepless nights alone. It's his newborn baby he left with his wife. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, here's the line. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Hey. From the fields of Indiana to the swamps of Louisiana to the golden coast of California, Uncle Sam's the only family he's got. His purple heartbeat won't stop, and his 18th birthday was the day he was born. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, here's the line. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, stand on the front line. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, pay the ultimate price. He was the man of the house when he was born. His family is proud but torn. But if you knew him, you would understand. He was raised on how to be brave, just to see the flag still wave. And then he came home with only one hand. He's Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down, hear the line. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, stand on these front lines. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, he'll pay the ultimate price. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, lay down his life. Mr. Red, White, and Blue, for these stars and stripes. March in line, march in line. Hey. Hey.
Opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Hi, welcome back to Tracer Rounds. I'm your host, Terry, and I have my special guest, Chaplain Jeffrey Blue. He is a lieutenant colonel in the U.S. Air Force. I said it right, Reserve. And we were talking before the break that we were talking about what a go bag looks like for a chaplain. What's the toolkit that you take when you deploy? So I'm just kind of curious, when they say it's time to bug out, what are you taking?
So it all depends. So if I know I'm going to a location that has everything that I need for mass, right? Vestments and the missal, the wine, obviously we can get water, potable water, the hosts, those sort of implements, candles that I need. That's great. I mean, candles you can buy if needed. So as long as we have those, then I don't need to take that. I need to take a mass kit, which contains most everything. And obviously I don't need the hard book anymore with the digital, the tablets and, the smartphones or laptops, as long as we have a Wi-Fi connection. But sometimes if you don't have the Wi-Fi connection, you're not gonna be able to do that. So we still take the books as just in case, the lectionary, the sacramentary that we now call the missal with us. But if we go to, various places, like for example, when I was deployed, I would go to the embassy. I would offer mass for the embassy staff. I would have mass for the base I was assigned at. I would have mass. I went to another base to offer mass in English. I went to offer mass in Polish because there was a Polish contingent. And then I went to offer mass for the Canadians because they only had a deacon. They didn't have a Catholic priest. So a lot of times on Sundays, it's a pretty busy day. I'm up early and up late because we have to travel sometimes an hour and a half, just to get to that base, an hour and a half to get back. Then I have to go to the next base. The embassy staff usually had mass on a Friday because they were off Friday and Saturday in Muslim countries because Sunday is a work day. So we didn't go to the embassy, but we would go. And so we would actually have everything there, or we would bring what we need if they didn't have it. And of course, you've got to be very careful in travel to make sure that, my identity is not revealed as to what I do. And so that was the case for the chaplain assistants at the time. And they would certainly take care of me as we did leave the base. So we would go to do all that. So it was really neat to meet a lot of people, and it was really neat to have those experiences. And I never knew that they had white camels, brown camels, and black camels, but I got to learn that. And as Jesus talked about, it's easier for the camel to pass through the eye of a needle, right, than for someone who's very wealthy to get into the kingdom of heaven. You kind of can hold the needle up. You watch the camels and you can see them pass through the eye of the needle, these proverbial optical illusions. So it was really neat to kind of put the gospel into context, right? So a lot of things that Jesus talked about, the desert foxes, I got to see them live and up front, and, the things that he said about them and camels and things that, so it really kind of helped that. But it also, you see the different way of life for different people and their different value systems in countries that you're in. But you also take with you the people back home, your family, your friends, your parishioners, and you take the people that you're serving, right, in the various bases that I went to, and in the joint world, the various people you come to know and you come to experience, and the people that you can really relate to and they relate to you. And you sometimes wonder, how helpful were you to them, right? And sometimes how invaluable you were to them, but you don't realize it. And then sometimes you realize how invaluable they were to you as well. God puts us in the right place with the right people, right at the right time. So there are always a lot of times some great experiences. You have some horrific ones, but God does that to try you to see, how things are going to go. How is it going to work out?
Right. Well, I wanted to mention too, if we've got anybody that has questions of the chaplain, the phone lines are open. You can use the phone line on the ticker, or you can put comments in the chat. He'd be happy to answer a few questions, I'm pretty sure. But I wanted to ask you too, we talked a little bit earlier today, but you mentioned that being a chaplain deployed, like it came with its own risk because of the faith that you ordained
Yeah,
by. So
yeah,
I
the
was
faith issue. Yeah, the faith
mention
issue
that.
is being deployed in in countries that are not necessarily how can I say it, not as accepting of the Catholic faith, can be rather difficult. You kind of make sure you're not detected, make sure the chaplain assistants are taking very good care of you in the sense of watching vehicles and people to make sure there are no incidents, and not using titles, just real first names or agreed upon names, so there is no problem. Because remember, as a non-combatant, I cannot carry any weapons. I can't hold your weapon, hold your ammunition, right? I can't be on a military vehicle, or whether it's a Humvee or a truck or a car, carrying ammunition or any weapons, because it would violate my non-combatant status. So, the chaplain assistants are the ones that are armed, that care for us, because otherwise we will lose that non-combatant status, to help with getting from point A to point B and back from B to A, in those cases. And unfortunately, sometimes we've had a few close calls, right? And so the chaplain said, "Father, I think this might be the end." I said, "It very well could be." So, but as you can see, I'm still here. So they were good experience. Yes, thankfully, thanks be to God, right? And we're still here. And so, it's interesting. So, you've got to be cognizant of that. You've got to be a lot more careful, a lot more respectful, a lot more diplomatic. And people have to really be on their game so as not to call you father, or something, because that will raise eyebrows and what's going on. The same thing, offering mass on a military installation is one thing, but like going to the embassy, and if you were ever caught offering mass, it could be very punishable. So you've got to be very cognizant and very, very careful of that, and what you're doing and what you're saying. So as the Navy says, right, loose lips sink ships. So you've got to watch your speech and what you're saying and doing, so you don't end up in those situations. So, it is very interesting, because remember, our role as a Catholic priest is in the outside world, right? In the civilian world, is the same as in the military. But in the military, a lot of things come with it, right? And we have those rank structures, we have those structures within the church, in the diocese that we serve, but also in the Archdiocese of Military Services. When we serve in the military, we come under that jurisdiction. So, and I'm also an officer, so you have to balance the officer role versus the chaplain role. And sometimes, they butt heads, and sometimes they dovetail like, two hands together. It goes hand in hand. Sometimes it doesn't. The officer of you wants to do this, but the chaplain of you wants to do that, whether with the member that you're counseling or talking to, or the staff member that you need to apply some sort of something to correct behaviors or actions or motivation, right? We'll leave it at that. So sometimes it's that struggle, like in a parish, where, do you do this or do you not do this? Do you apply that pressure or don't you? Because people are stressed out enough, and we don't need to add to it, or we want to relieve it and make it better. But there are a lot of things that will bring people to their boiling point, right, or to their difficult point, that we need to mitigate for them, and to bring that stress level down, right, so that they can focus on what they need to, and their loved ones back home, or their loved ones, if they are here in the States, right, and when they go home, to have that balance between the military and their family life. So a lot of times it's common sense, really, in counseling. You ask them, well, common sense, would you or wouldn't you do that? Is this a good decision or isn't it? And you kind of work them through it. You don't need to start giving them a theological lesson in your respective denomination of faith, but just to help them, right? Sometimes we're just a sounding board for them. Somebody safe that's going to listen, somebody safe that's going to love them, right, in the appropriate way, and to be respectful of them. And no matter what they decide, it's their decision. We're there to help them. And if they choose a wrong decision, they have the freedom to do that. they choose, a good decision, they have the freedom to do that too. So we're there to help them, to assist them. So, and sometimes we have to watch that line that I don't impose what I would do. I want to make sure that they do what they want to do, right? Because that's respecting them, and that's respecting, their religious freedom. Sometimes, there isn't a rabbi. So, hey, Father, I need to talk with you, or there isn't a Protestant minister. I need some advice. And so, and my brother chaplains, have to do the same thing. Hey, there's a Catholic that presents themselves. I need some advice in this or that. And so they have to provide the same thing. So, but we don't, I don't do a Jewish service or a Muslim service or a various Protestant service. We stick to our lane and our denomination. So, it's important to do that. So, full disclosure, say to the person, I'm not a rabbi. I'm not this type of Protestant denomination. I'm a Catholic priest, but I'm happy to help you. And people are just usually Father, I'll take any help I can get, or chaplain, I'll take any help I can get. So you give them the help that you can and that they need and that they deserve. And they're usually extremely appreciative, because you took the time to accept them, to love them, and you took the time to really sit with them and to listen to them, right? Not talk to them, but listen, and then provide any sort of advice that you can to help them in their situation. And they know it's 100% confidential.
We got to go to break. So hold that thought.
Sure.
We got to go to break. But when we come back, we'll finish your thoughts on how you help people. So H, take us to break, please. Thanks.
opinions expressed in this program are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views or positions of any entities they represent.
Find us on the web at mbradio.us.
Hi, welcome back to Tracer Rounds on MBR, where veterans have a voice. And I'm with my special guest, Chaplain Jeffrey Ballou. And we were talking a little bit about his work helping people. And he was going to finish up his thoughts on that. And we were going to kind of pivot a little bit and talk about some different levels of chaplain work. So go ahead, Chaplain.
Sure. So as I mentioned probably a few times before, but a lot of people like to come to see us because we have complete and absolute confidentiality, right? Once we close the door, right, whatever they say is confidential, right? They hold the confidentiality, right? And so we kind of hold it for them. And we're not allowed to talk to them, as we see them, at the shop at or on post or on base or in the commissary, in the BX, out in public, at a game, at a concert, at a stand up or whatever, and go over to them and say, hey, by the way, because that would reveal that they came to see us, right? And that might reveal what they came to talk about or the issue, and you could break that confidentiality, not realizing it. So we may see them privately and say, hey, how you doing? Need a second visit, or if they give us their phone number, call them up and, talk to them. Hey, how you doing? Because sometimes, people need that, that encouragement. They need that love. They need that they matter. And that's very, very important. And that's a lot what we do on the tactical level, right? We do, mass, we hear confessions, we do counseling. And then there's the operational level. So at the next level, we make sure that the chapel runs and we have care of the staff and make sure the chaplains and chaplain assistants, now religious affairs, that they do their, PME and, their EPRs, now EPBs and OPBs, used to be OPRs, get done. And they're out doing what they're supposed to be doing. And then on the strategic level, we start thinking, at a higher level of a lot of the things, for example, in the Air Force, of how we can tie a lot of that together with what we're doing. And now where we work, it's not just here in the States, but it's also internationally, right? With the various partner nations that we work with and the various chaplains that we come in contact, or contacting them, or they're contacting us, not to mention our own people who are deployed or stationed in foreign countries to provide the support that we can give to them, right? And thinking strategically of their actions. They might think it's just tactical or, it's operational while they open the chapel doors. Okay, that's great, but there's a little bit more that goes on to that. And how does that affect their mission, their commander, and how does it affect us where we work and us back home? So it does present some interesting challenges to sort of, if you will, think out of the box and, okay, you got these roadblocks, and how are you going to deliver or provide care, provide services, right, that the chaplains need to provide, and get leadership sometimes to realize the importance of chaplains. Some of them don't realize it, but then, when there's a suicidal ideation or there's a real problem, we're invaluable to them because they don't know how to handle it. They want us to handle it for them and give them a good advice. Remember, it's advising leadership is one of our core competencies. And so we advise leadership on what's going on. We're not spies. We're not moles. We a lot of times get the tenor of what's going on. So strategically, we provide the commander with, how is morale? How is things going? We're not the morale officer, but again, we get a lot of information from people in the sense just by observing. They don't need to come to see us or say anything. Just how are things going? Just standing in line, at the cafeteria to get lunch, standing in line at the BX to pick up something, in line to get on the installation or to get off. And, we're walking the corridor and you hear this stuff and you go, hey, things are going good. Or, gee, that policy didn't really go over very well. Or, there's a real issue or there's a real problem. And you sometimes you've got to get leaders to listen to you. And a lot of them want to listen to you, to what you can help them make a better installation, better base, better post by how sometimes what is said, not necessarily what is said, but how it's said and where the delivery is for that to help the unit or the base or the people to be better, right, and to grow. So as chaplains, we sort of wear a lot of proverbial hats, right? But it's a really a good experience in so many ways as a priest. It's been enriching to me as a priest, right, in the civilian side, and then you bring that to the military side, and that enriches my care of the people on the military side. But then you bring that military piece back to the civilian side, and that enriches, how you care for the people as well. I remember when I became a pastor for the first time at St. Mary's in Ware, Massachusetts, and I sat down in the seat and I said, how the heck am I going to do this? And I thought, thank God for that 5.5 years of being a corporate administrator. Oh, I can run this parish, because it's like running, unfortunately, it's like running a corporation. It's like running a business. I know how to do this. And a lot of my brother priests don't have that experience, so it's very hard. So again, some of the things flow into each other, right? You get the experience one way or the other, and those experiences help us to care for other people, because we have a lot of relatable stories. I remember before I was deployed, right, I would counsel people going to a deployment and coming back, and some of them would go, Father, you have no idea what I'm talking about. Chaplain, you don't know, you haven't been there. Well, when I did it a number of times, I can quite relate to them now about all kinds of experiences, right, of deployment, because it's experiential. We have the same experiences. We went through the same thing. I'm much more relatable to them than not relatable. And that matters a lot. You got the street cred, as they say, the street credit, you got the experiences, and they'll relate to that. And that's what you want to be able to do, is be relatable. And that's a lot of, I think, what the chaplaincy is all about, is being relatable, right? Just like Jesus, being relatable to people. And
Right.
That's what we have to be able to do. And we have to be able to shift gears, as we see the Air Force doing, right, in their next metamorphosis. And we have to do the same thing in society, right? We have to be able to meet people where they're at and whatever they're doing, whatever they're going through, and provide that love, that care, and that compassion in what they're doing, whether we agree with it or we don't agree with it. That's not what they're asking us. They're asking us for care and confidentiality, and that's what we're here to provide. So hopefully that helps kind of spell out, the sort of average day or average career, right, of a United States Air Force chaplain who happens to be a Roman Catholic priest. So on all those levels and even more.
Right. Well, that's pretty incredible breadth of information and breadth of responsibility for you and for, those that do what you do in the services. I really want to thank you for coming on and just kind of talking to us about it, because I don't know how many people really know of the chaplaincy still in the military. I mean, like I really didn't. Beyond basic training, I thought that's the only place they ever existed, and I would never see one again. And then I run into a whole passel of them. So it's really exciting for me to, it's really exciting for me to get to be able to work with you guys and then engage. Even though I'm not a chaplain and I'm not a chaplain's assistant, it's still like very rewarding from my own standpoint to get to engage with your services you provide to airmen, to soldiers, to sailors, to Marines, to just the whole gamut of service members. So I really appreciate you coming by. And
sure. But in our time together, right, you've seen people come in tears. They're talking to you a little bit, sharing their lives in shreds, tatters. They're in tears, right? Their life's in chaos, and we don't really, we help them to the best of our ability. But a lot of times, right, they leave not crying. They leave sometimes smiling, and sometimes those days, those weeks, those months later on, they're in a much better place than when we first met them. And then they tell other people of the help they received. So when they're in a precarious situation, they, will come by and they trust us and to help them. So we a lot of times see people at their best, right? Promotion or birth of a child or PCSing to a great place. And we see the opposite. They didn't get promoted. They're not PCSing to a great place. they're having trouble conceiving a child, or problems with the loved ones back home or whatever. And so we see them at their best and their worst and everything in between. So it's about being there for them, right? About bringing God into the situation, if they're obviously, God loving, God fearing, and to help them out in that area. A lot of times, Father, why is this happening? Or why is God doing this to me? And I don't know, but let's see if we can sort of find out.
That's our time. Yep, that's our time. Thank you so much for joining us, and tune in next week for Tracer Rounds at 7 Eastern on Tuesday. Thank you.
Thank you
for
Bye-bye.
MBR. Bye.
That's the show for today, everyone. Thanks for listening. We'll be back next week with an all-new show. And remember, you can listen to us again and again. The podcast of this radio show is available right after we go off the air tonight, anywhere that you can get your podcast episodes. And thanks for joining us today. I'd like to